With a hip, hip and clippity-clop. He's out looking for a top to chop, so don't try to figure out a plan. You can't reason with a headless man. Welcome to Teacup For One.
Headless Horseman needs a head.
My name is Matt and I have 2 degrees. And today for the Spooky Movie Marathon, we are looking at something almost unheard of. A Disney animated film that stays true to its source material. I'm shocked too. Now, we all know Disney is notorious for making changes to the stories that they adapt for their animated films. But in the case of their 1949 adaptation of Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, the reason that short works so well is because it stays true to the source material. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is one of 34 short stories and essays by Washington Irving from his collection, The Sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, Gent. Apparently he had a pen name and it was Geoffrey Crayon, Gentleman, and I personally think that's adorable. The story is about schoolmaster Ichabod Crane vying for the love, attention, but mostly the money of Katrina Van Tassel and the rivalry he develops with one of her other suitors, Brom Bones. Eventually, Ichabod hears the tale of the Headless Horseman. They're a local, favorite, evil, malicious ghost who has no head and rides a horse, somehow. I mean, that's very impressive. And on his way home one night from a party at Katrina's house, he comes face to faceless with the Headless Horseman himself. Ichabod then disappears and is never heard of again, and Brom Bones and Katrina marry. Originally, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow was supposed to be a Walt Disney animated feature, but presumably the production team realized that they couldn't really stretch the story into like a 60 to 90 minute runtime, so that's why it ended up being paired with Mr. Toad to give us The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. But making that decision meant that we got a perfect visualization of Irving's story. It hits all the key plot points and it even brings to life the characters exactly as he described them. Just listen to this description of Ichabod Crane. He was tall, but exceedingly lank, with narrow shoulders, long arms and legs, hands that dangled a mile out of his sleeves, feet that might have served for shovels, and his whole frame most loosely hung together. His head was small and flat at top, with huge ears and a long snipe nose, so that it looked like a weathercock perched upon his spindle neck to tell which way the wind blew. But, of course, beautiful Disney animation aside, the best thing about this film is the Headless Horseman. The figure of the Headless Horseman has become synonymous with, like, not even just Disney Halloween, but Halloween in general. Now, there are accounts of headless ghosts dating all the way back to medieval times, but the Headless Horseman has solidified himself in our culture as a distinctly American spirit. Washington Irving based his story around legends of a soldier who was decapitated by a 12-pound cannonball during the Battle of White Plains in 1776. His decapitated body was buried, but his head apparently survived the same fate as a smashed pumpkin, which is why I imagine the jack-o'-lantern imagery is so strongly tied to this story. And thus began the creation of an American legend, the Headless Horseman. And I think what makes The Legend of Sleepy Hollow so unique is that Washington Irving isn't just telling us a ghost story, he's telling us a ghost story about the ghost story, if that makes sense. Like I said, the main draw behind this story is just the fact that we have a ghost who is headless, riding around on horseback looking for his original head, or looking to steal someone else's head, or throwing jack-o'-lanterns at poor innocent school teachers, and just haunting a poor, small, sleepy hollow. See what I did there? And the main fear just comes out of acknowledging this ghost's existence. But of course, it's not enough to just say there's this ghost and he exists. It has to be framed within some kind of story. So then that's when Ichabod Crane, Brom Bones, and Katrina all come into play with their love triangle.
The math of love triangles is super duper fun.
Is it a good story? Sure. Is it more interesting than the Headless Horseman? No, of course not. That's why you only see the Headless Horseman, like, leading the Boo to You parade at Magic Kingdom, and no one bats an eye wondering where Ichabod Crane is. No one cares about Ichabod Crane. Now, I'd say the reason that the Disney adaptation is superior to all others is because they maintain the integrity of the ghost story being a ghost story. Most other adaptations that do try to extend the story out into a feature-length film make a very clear decision about whether the Headless Horseman is real or not. The first ever adaptation of Sleepy Hollow to film was a 1922 silent film where right at the end they reveal that the Headless Horseman chasing Ichabod was Brom Bones in disguise all along. Then you have the more recent Tim Burton adaptation, Sleepy Hollow, where the entire movie is just based around the supernatural backstory that made the Headless Horseman the Headless Horseman, because he sold his soul to Miranda Richardson, who's a twin or something, and he's Christopher Walken, and I saw it once. The Disney film, however, ends exactly the same as Irving's story. Ichabod disappears, and all that's found is his hat and some pieces of broken pumpkin, and his disappearance becomes a legend in its own right. Some eyewitness reports say he went off and became a lawyer. Some people believe that he was captured by the Headless Horseman, but just like the Horseman, now no one knows if he still exists or not. And that is all you need. And who knows, maybe he is actually Brom Bones in disguise trying to scare Ichabod away from Katrina. Maybe it was actually the Headless Horseman taking his head and dragging him off to hell or something. But that doesn't change the fact that within the frame story, Brom Bones tells Ichabod about the Headless Horseman just as a scare tactic in their battle to win Katrina's hand in marriage. The whole frame story about Ichabod and Brom Bones is about taking somebody's beliefs and anxieties and using them as a weapon against them, which is basically how fear works. But we're going to get a lot more into that once we hit Witch Week. But for now, friends, that concludes yet another episode of Teacup For One. Let me know in the comment section down below. Do you believe the Headless Horseman is real? Or was it just Brom Bones in disguise? And if you want to follow me for the rest of my spooky movie marathon, but you have not yet subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? It's so easy, you just have to click on my face. Thanks for joining me today, everyone. My name is Matt and I have 2 degrees, and that's the Teacup For One. Go away.